Let's go straight to my next guest, Brendan O'Neill. He's chief political writer at Spiked Online. Very good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, today we've got an announcement from the Prime Minister, a speech in Yorkshire. I think he's speaking right now. We're not taking it live because we like our audience too much, saying he's going to tackle our overcautious and flabby state. He wants to reform, he says, our fantastic civil servants who are working in a system, he says, that doesn't work. He wants to deliver more efficiency. He's talking about using AI, saving £45 billion, apparently, by using AI to do jobs which can be done better, effectively, by computers than by human beings. Do you have any belief or faith that the Prime Minister can reform the state?
Not really. I'm hopeful that someone will do something, because currently we have the worst of both worlds. We have a huge, massive, creaking state that just doesn't do what it should be doing. You know, it does too much of the stuff it shouldn't be doing, like DEI and telling parents how to parent and when to brush their kids' teeth and all this other stuff, all this interventionist nanny state stuff that no one really wants. It does loads of that, but it doesn't do enough house building or infrastructure or energy production or job creation, all those things that a state might actually be useful for.
Yeah. Or emptying the bins in Birmingham at the moment.
Yeah, emptying the bins, the practical stuff of everyday life, and, you know, making people more comfortable and more wealthy. Those are things the state should be deployed towards doing, but it's not doing enough of that. So something needs to be done, because we live under this bloated state. Starmer is absolutely right about that. But the thing is, Labour is the party of quangos, of bureaucrats. It's the party that loves the European Union because you get to outsource decision making to external experts. That's what it's known for. So whether it can chip away at this state, I'm not sure.
Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? Because, I mean, this is the man who says he wants to cut the state. He's created 27 new quangos just in 7 months, for goodness sake. Got rid of one, 27 new quangos. They keep coming up against things like the sentencing guidelines issued by the Sentencing Council, going, oh, we don't approve of this. Well, I tell you, former Prime Minister Gordon Brown set up this organisation as an independent body, and they get to do what they want unless you bring in a new law to stop it. And this is part of the problem, isn't it? He says he wants to also use, more AI, stop using so many consultants. And that's one of the things I found very strange. We're told we've got this sort of first-class, world-class civil service, all these, top Oxbridge graduates, and yet they have to pay a fortune, millions and millions, bringing in consultants to tell them how to do things. And I'm thinking, why don't we just hire the consultants and get them to do it in the first place?
You know, there is no question that something's gone horribly wrong with our civil service. I mean, firstly, loads of them are still working at home. You always see these reports. Some of them are working in Spain and Australia and all sorts of places. It's crazy. A lot of them are reluctant to go to the office, and that's where I think a civil service should be based. If people are running the country, they should be talking to each other and having meetings and being efficient. But also, we know from the past few years that there's a blob in Whitehall as well. There is a part of the civil service that openly refuses to do what some of the democratically elected ministers tells them to do. So it's a kind of defiant civil service as well. It's an ideological civil service. So I think this question goes beyond efficiency. It's also about the political role that the civil service plays. Is it going to enact the will of the people as expressed at a general election, or is it going to do its own thing? So there are loads of question marks hanging over the civil service right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they're neither civil nor servants anymore. They don't serve us. And they're political, not civil. I think a lot of Labour politicians and Labour voters were of the view that, they pretended that they thought that Whitehall was independent, when of course it hasn't been for many years. I mean, Remainer, Labour voting, woke, you name it. Basically, you don't get ahead unless you are those things. And big state over small state, etc., etc. But they sort of assumed, they've been holding back the Tories and making complaints about any minister who says, "Could you do your job, please?" In the wrong tone of voice. Those people are probably all off sick, claiming personal independence payments now for disability, for anxiety. But they thought, well, when we get in, they're going to be on our side. And it turns out they're not.
Yeah, they're a law unto themselves. That's part of the problem with the bloc. And you're right to raise, what some of them did to Conservative ministers. I remember Priti Patel was accused of bullying just because she expected people to do their job. And she occasionally raised her voice and she had high expectations. I'm sorry, but if you can't handle a woman who knows what she wants in the workplace and wants you to do it, then maybe you shouldn't be working in the civil service. Maybe you should go somewhere else.
Well, indeed.
But, Labour, the thing about Labour is that they made fun of people who said that there was a blob in Whitehall.
Yeah.
They said, don't exaggerate. The state is fine. It's doing what it needs to do. In fact, it should be bigger. So I'm glad they've come around to the way of thinking of people like us, Julia, which is that the state has very important roles to play, but there's also lots of stuff it shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But it comes back to that question. Does Labour trust the public enough to chip away at the state? Because if you are really going to shrink the state and make it more efficient and make it better, you do have to trust ordinary people a bit more and trust us to get on with our lives a bit more without needing the nanny state.
Yeah.
And I think that trust is there with Labour.
Well, indeed, but also, again, they'll be looking at their voters and their paymasters and the trade unions. We're going to be talking to a trade union leader a little bit later about that. But also, you know, when you look at the people who vote Labour and that loveless landslide that Labour had, you know, you're looking at, you know, public sector workers, crucial, absolutely crucial, a part of that alliance of voters, and they're not going to want to upset too many of them.
Well, exactly right. You know, sadly, for the past few decades, we've lived under a kind of feudalistic system where you have this layer of influential, primarily middle class, university educated people who run the public sector, who run the social work departments, who run the civil service, who oversee the blob. And they basically tell the rest of us how to live. They tell the plebs how to live, what to do, how to recycle, how to raise your children. We've allowed this feudalistic system to rise up and to take over what was traditionally seen as a slim welfare state that would come into people's lives when it was really necessary. So there's been a real turnaround in how politics is conducted in this country. And you're right, a lot of the people who have a vested interest in maintaining that kind of overlord system of an overbearing state, they are on the side of Labour. And will Labour want to tick them off? I'm not sure.
Yeah, indeed. Now, something else I know you and I have been in agreement on is that we've been very excited and hopeful about Donald Trump being re-elected in America, having lots of criticisms of his as a human being and many of his personal qualities, but a lot of his policies when it came to tackling wokery, climate change, nonsense, and mass uncontrolled immigration, particularly illegal immigration in the United States as well, and all those issues very much on side. However, I know we're also both very concerned about his attitude towards Ukraine. Donald Trump has threatened to devastate the Russian economy, he says, if Putin refuses a peace deal. His envoy, Stephen Witkoff, has arrived in Moscow. Putin has returned, taken the camouflage jacket off after his visit to the Kursk region, to the front line, where Ukrainian troops have seized some of that territory, losing it day by day, but nevertheless managed to take some Russian territory for a number of months. We understand that Putin has come back with basically his demands, you know, no NATO membership for Ukraine, no international peacekeepers, certainly no NATO country peacekeepers, certainly the coalition of the willing that Keir Starmer and Macron are putting together, but also wanting recognition, legal international recognition that Russia now owns Crimea and the eastern Donbass regions. What do you make of this, and what do you think that is going to come of these talks, and what do you think Donald Trump will do?
Well, you know, what a relief that Donald Trump is putting pressure on Russia for once. You know, I think the bullying of Zelensky over the past couple of weeks has been horrific, really horrendous. Imagine your country is invaded, your people are slaughtered by the aggressors from Russia, and then you get a telling off in the Oval Office, and then you get demonized on the internet. You know, there are the crankier sections of the online right are so hostile to Zelensky. It's really actually quite repulsive. Yeah. This is a wartime leader who's done a good job of leading his country when it's been under attack. So he you know, leave Zelensky alone, give him the support that he needs. So I'm glad Trump's turning his fire on Russia a little bit. But, you know, the tragedy, Julia, I think, is that there's going to be a deal soon, and it's not going to be to the benefit of Ukraine. I think they have fought an incredibly brave fight. They've put up such a good fight, but the pressure against them is just enormous because they've got Russia invading them. They've got Trump abandoning them. They've got European leaders promising to support them, but these are European leaders who can't even protect their own borders, never mind Ukraine's. So Ukraine is in a sticky position. I think we really do need to get behind Zelensky to make sure that the deal is not as bad as Russia wants it to be. But I do think we're heading for a pretty sad situation.
Yeah, although it is interesting, we're calling Trump's bluff and indeed Putin's bluff. I mean, Trump says, oh, Putin wants peace. Putin claims he wants peace. I mean, there's simply no evidence for that. As a general rule, if you want peace, you don't invade a neighbouring state. I mean, there are clues, aren't there? There are clues. But, we may see a reality check for Donald Trump's White House. Yeah,
I think there is going to be a massive split now between America and Europe. That's pretty clear. And Europe needs to get its act together. It is astonishing to me that it took an argument in the Oval Office for European countries to get serious about defence spending. In the UK, for the past few years, we've been spending more on sickness benefits than on defence.
Yeah.
We've been spending more on keeping people at home, many of whom could probably work, than we have on funding the brave young men and women in our defence forces who are willing to put their lives on the line for this country. So we need to sort out our priorities. The fact that it took an argument between Trump and Zelensky to make us do that is astonishing, but thankfully it might finally happen.
Indeed. So much more to talk about, but our time's against us. Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spiked Online. Always great to have you join us. Thank you very much indeed.